Hi, it's me, Egbert, Eggburt, the owner of this radio station. I invite everyone to listen, no matter if you're young, old, black, white, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, heck, I even want real estate agents listening to my station. Yes, even Rick and Tracy. You're all welcome. Now, it's back to my Goodwill ambassadors, Brad and John.
Yes, and we are Egbert's Goodwill ambassadors. Okay, John, we're going to talk about the Hoffmanns, but first off, you say you have an interesting quote about the Kathy Conway obituary?
Yeah, so Jack Suntrup from the Post-Dispatch did the write-up of Kathy's death here and included a little bit about her family. And I'll read you one line here, which is, Conway is survived by her. So she was preceded in death by her parents, also preceded in death by her husband. Conway is survived by her son, Ryan Conway, which, by the way, most listeners would probably know. Ryan had worked for Governor Parson for a while, has had a career in the Parson administration and various agencies, and had been involved in Republican stuff for a long time. Anyway, and her sister, Sandra McCarty. Now, here's the money line, Brad. Kathy Conway is also the grandmother of a soon-to-be-born grandson. So, Brad, I think it's really brave and bold of a reporter from the Post-Dispatch to acknowledge that a child who's yet to be born is actually a person, is actually a grandson. And in today's culture, I think if you're a journalist, you're probably under a lot of pressure to talk about a baby inside a woman's body as being some clump of cells or some fetus or some sort of disassociated entity that's not a person. And I think it's really brave of Jack Suntrup to point out that this beautiful baby boy, who would be Kathy Conway's grandson, who will be her grandson, even though Kathy has passed, that this beautiful baby boy is actually a child and is not a clump of cells or a fetus.
John, I see what you did there. I see what you did there.
It's not a trick, Brad. I'm giving Jack credit here. And I think a lot of us have beat up on the Post-Dispatch, and I'll take credit and blame for beating up on Jack Suntrup as being a liberal. But for him to embrace the fact that life begins at conception and that this beautiful baby boy is indeed valuable and is indeed a human life, I think that's brave of Jack.
John, can I tell you something?
Yeah.
I'm going to say the Serenity Prayer right now, and I'm not going there. Okay, so I'm not saying anything further than that. Okay,
that works for me. But you know what? You will talk about a successful businessman who's taken big risks, and some of them pay off, some of them don't. But people sit in the cheap seats and throw popcorn, and that man's name is Mr. Hoffmann.
Well, I'm a little bit too close to this because we used to have a lot of our operations in Washington, and quite honestly, the Hoffmanns have cost me money in the respect that we had some really good clients. Matter of fact, for a long time, for like 24 years, we advertised for the Hillerman Nursery and Florist, which was one of the success stories, second generation running it. And unfortunately, it was sold to the Hoffmanns, as quite a few businesses. And our crap transmitter site sits right there on Highway 47, about a mile north of the Missouri River, a mile north of downtown Washington. And right down the street from us, on one side, there's a for sale sign for the Ferguson Nursery. On the other side of the street, there's a for sale sign for a hangar and I think 10 acres of ground, which were bought by the Hoffmanns to essentially, A, run a landscaping business and grow trees on the side of the highway I'm on, and on the other side of the highway to have a helicopter tour business, with both of them, neither have materialized. They bought the Emmaus home, and they're going to make that into this fancy schmancy resort. That's gone. They announced they're going to build this fancy schmancy 5-star hotel. Nothing's ever been done. They're going to build a 12-hole golf course. Nothing's ever been done. They're going to build an amphitheater. Nothing's ever been done. And John sends me an article the other day out of the Post-Dispatch saying, from the Hoffmanns' viewpoint, saying, hey, everything's right on track. Isn't that essentially what the article was saying? I mean,
I think so. And I have a new view of, and I didn't link to this because it's not about Missouri politics, but I have a new view of the Hoffmanns. And before, Brad, I thought that, I had kind of bought into the narrative that they came in and they spent a lot of money and they haven't fulfilled any promises. But I have a newfound love for them, and I think it's because of you, Brad. And I think that David Hoffmann, his name is David, right?
Yes. And her name is Jerry.
David Hoffmann is Brad with billions. He starts a lot of projects, and let's face it, not all of them see a whole lot of follow through.
Well, but
and it would be easy for me. Hold on, let me finish, Brad. It would be easy for me, as I do sometimes, Brad. I poke fun at you, and I poke fun about the fact that me and Mike Otten would be the only ones who would post on Westplex Social, even though you would promote it. And I poke fun at the fact that you'll start a domain a week and not follow through. And that's easy for me to do, to sit and nitpick and whatever. But Brad, you take a lot of risks. You buy a lot of $10 domains, and some of them you invest time in and some of them you don't. David Hoffmann is Brad with billions. He invests real money in big, ambitious projects. And when they don't pan out, people sit in the top row and throw popcorn at him and say, the Hoffmanns, can you believe him with his money? Ha ha. He failed at that one thing. What a loser. Yeah, Brad, that would be like me criticizing you starting a domain a week. It's easy to do, but you know what? You're taking risks, Brad, and I appreciate the ambition of both of you.
Well, John, the difference is it's not necessarily billions, but the difference is I don't issue press releases that talk about, oh, we've just bought this. And I mean, like,
if you had the resources, you would.
I would not. See, so let me tell you something.
You don't post it on your face. Oh, go ahead. I'm not gonna bicker with you about this.
Well, I will tell you a story that and for example, like in Defiance. You ever go to Defiance? You ever go along 94 through Defiance? There's not much in Defiance.
Not intentionally, no.
Okay, there's not much in Defiance. And I'm not making fun of the people in Defiance, but essentially there's the S-curve in Defiance. And most people know the S-curve in Defiance because there's the two biker bars, at least there used to be, the two biker bars. And one was like John and Terry, and the other one was Kathy and Bill's. And they've gone through some changes. Okay, the Hoffmanns bought both of them. They bought both of the bars across the street from each other. And for whatever reason, they sold the one. And matter of fact, it was interesting. I was through Defiance on, was it Saturday, I think it was? Yeah, Saturday. Okay. And Don's Place, which is named after Don Simon, I believe is his name. Is you familiar with that? You know who he is? I think his name's Don Simon. No. He's he's essentially the Missouri CEO of the Hoffmann organization. In other words, he's essentially the dude that's in charge of all their Hoffmann stuff, which in this case is all the wineries and all the stuff they bought in Franklin and St. Charles County. Okay. Don's Place is closed down. Matter of fact, they had, I don't know why, they had yellow caution tape on there's like a porch with like railings on it. They had the yellow caution tape all taped up. The place across the street was bought by a local business people. I believe they also run Wenty's Restaurant, which you're probably familiar with down on Chesterfield Airport Road down there in the valley. You know where Wenty's is, right?
You said Wendy's or Wenty's?
Wenty's, Wentes, Wenty's. It's been there forever.
No, I'm not familiar with it.
It's on Chesterfield Airport Road. It's near the entrance to the airport there. Okay. Anyway, I believe that family bought the restaurant. So I'm driving through Defiance, and on the right side, as I'm going, east or north on 94, whichever way you look at it, on the right side is Don's Place, which is still owned by the Hoffmanns, and it's closed. On the left side of the road is a new ownership bar, and the place is rocking. There's a band on stage. There's motorcycles everywhere. There's people out enjoying themselves. Okay, so next to that was the bicycle rental place, which the Hoffmanns also bought. That went under, and now it's some kind of a market or something like that, and local people have bought it. So once again, the crazy thing on this is that, and where I will draw the line between you and I, is that they bought existing businesses and to a certain extent killed some of them. I don't buy existing businesses, I start businesses. And once again, the entrepreneur's creed is that, how do you increase your successes? You increase your failures. There's a famous quote by the former CEO of Matsushitsu, Matsushitsu Industries, which is the parent company of Panasonic and other consumer brands. And he says, 95% of success is failures. In other words, the idea being is that you when you're out there doing 100% of what you're doing, 5% of it's going to succeed, 95% is going to fail. The difference with most successful people is, and I will tell you right up front, I don't consider myself successful. In a lot of ways, I consider myself a failure in many areas. But if you look at most successful people, they can tell you all their failures and how it helped them essentially become successful. Now, The crazy thing with the Hoffmanns is that, I don't know if you know this, they also have an office building in downtown Clayton. Do you know about this?
This was a key. Did you read the story that I sent you?
Yes, but this is this.
Yeah, it was the key part of that story. Yeah.
Right. This has been in other things that they are essentially in foreclosure in an office building in downtown Clayton. Now, what you and I don't realize, or maybe you do, you're a smart guy, you know business. Most people look at that and go, "Oh my God, the Hoffmanns are in foreclosure on their business in downtown, their office building in downtown Clayton." I say that is a strategic foreclosure, and you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, so they can. I mean, that's probably one division of their business that's a separate entity that they can write off.
Well, no. What the strategic foreclosure is, they bought the building at a certain price, and very, very similar to essentially what's happening with Odyssey, which owns Y98 and a bunch of those. They bought a business at a certain price, and all of a sudden the market changed, and they can't afford a place anymore. So what they do is, the strategic foreclosure is, the bank comes along and says, okay, we're going to foreclose on this property. And then what they do is they say, well, I'll tell you what, Mr. Banker, you're going to find out that even though you lent us $10 million and now the building is only worth $1 million, you're not going to be able to get your $10 million back. So why don't you just refi it, and we'll put the loan at $2 million, which essentially will put you $1 million above what the current appraisal price is, and we'll move on down the road. So in other words, I don't think that they're going to lose control of the building. They're just playing the odds. They're just playing the business game. And once again, I mean, to you and I, if we had, like, let's say we had 3 cars, let's say John has 3 cars, and he has a Mercedes, a Lexus, and a Chevy Nova, or not a Chevy Nova, a Chevy Cruze, and you don't make your payments on your Chevy Cruze, and you're going to go like, the repo man shows up one day and hooks up his tow truck, and you're going to go like, I don't miss that Cruze too much anymore, because I got my Mercedes and I got my Lexus, right? You know what I'm saying?
Right. I mean, yeah, I completely get it.
It's to the point where it's like, I hated that little car anyway, so they can have it. But I think the problem that I have with the whole thing is that what the Hoffmanns is, it's all smoke and mirrors. And to the point where it's like, do you know the reason? Like, for example, I went to the Cottleville Weldon Springs Chamber of Commerce meeting when Don Simon, they bought if you go into some of these chamber meetings, what you do is you are able to like buy the sponsorship of the meeting, and you get like 10 minutes to get up there and do your dog and pony show and the whole bit. So this particular time, the Hoffmann company bought the sponsorship. This has probably been, 3 years ago or something like that. They bought the sponsorship for the Cottleville Weldon Springs Chamber of Commerce. Don Simon was the featured speaker, and he's showing all these graphs. And I'm sitting there not too far from one of the TV monitors, all these stuff is coming up on. I'm taking pictures of them, and somewhere they're in my phone. And the graphs are like, here's 2019, and the number of people coming into Augusta, it's way down at the bottom. And here's 2020, and that's when the Hoffmanns started buying stuff, and it ticks up a little bit. And here's 2021, and this is like 3 or 4 years ago. So in other words, this is like backwards now. And by the time you got to 2024, the chart is off the top. It's like, whoa, look at this. The reality of that is, drive through Augusta, like I do quite often. I say things have gotten worse in Augusta. I say there are less people going to Augusta. I say there are less people going to the wineries because, do you know why, John?
Why is that?
They turned the place into Napa Valley. That's what their whole goal was, Napa Valley, okay? Have you ever been to Napa Valley?
I have.
So, was it cheap? Was it like going to Walmart, or was it like going to
super expensive? Super expensive.
So once again, that's what they did. They made, matter of fact, a friend of mine told me that she went into, I don't even know if it's open anymore. They opened up a clothing boutique that was Jerry Hoffmann's little prize thing where she had her clothing in. And she calls me up one night and she goes, some friends of mine, we went down to Augusta and I went to Jerry's boutique and I saw this top that I really liked, but it was $450. Okay. Now, once again, John, how many women are going to be driving down to Augusta and go into Jerry's boutique and buy a $450 blouse, right?
Yeah, well, I'm sure that store is closed now, Brad. If they're charging that much, I'm sure people decided to not purchase it, and the store went out of business.
But once again, the problem is that they did all this, and like for example, the 12-hole golf course. Okay, at this chamber meeting I speak of, that was a question that came up. Some guy, because Don said we're building a 12-hole golf course, and some guy asked a question. He goes, "Excuse me, but why are you building a 12-hole golf course?" And the reason for that is, John, are you a golfer?
I am not.
Okay, but golf courses usually come in two sizes. You know what sizes those are?
Yeah, 18 and what, 36?
No, 9. Well, there are 36, but most of them there's 9 and 18. Okay,
9 and 18.
There are the smaller courses are 9-hole, 18. Some of them do have like 36. Some of them do have like 27, where they have like they have a 9-hole course and then have like an 18-hole course. And a lot of times the way the course is designed, you can play the front 9, you can play the back 9. You don't have to play all 18. Okay, so he says, well, all golf courses are 12 holes, and everybody in the audience looked at each other like, "What?" I mean, and he didn't wasn't a joke. He said that, and you know what the problem with the golf course is?
What's that?
They didn't figure out that
that was in the story that I sent you, Brad.
There's rock underneath that ground, and if you get into that area, if you go down into that area, and interestingly enough, when I say this, people will argue with me, but when you get down on south on 270, when you're going through, the rocks there between Big Bend and 44, and when you drive out on 44 and you drive through the mountains there, or the whatever you want to call it, the hills to Antire Road, and you go out into Franklin County, those are the foothills of the Ozarks. Did you know that? Did you know that's considered to be the foothills of the Ozarks?
I didn't know that. Wow, that's interesting.
Yes, the foothills of the Ozarks, okay? And guess what? In a lot of places, you go down about 2 feet and you hit rock, okay? Don't you think that if you're going to build a golf course, you would have sent somebody out there and saying, "Hey, we're going to buy this property. Why don't you go out there and do some core drillings?" You know what I'm talking about, where they take a drill rig out and literally they drill into the ground and they see how far down until they hit rock. Okay, don't you think they would have sent somebody out to do that? But no, they just buy it and say, "We're going to build a 12-hole golf course." That's why I think people are making fun of them, because they made stupid business decisions. And they just, to the point where maybe they took the Howard Stern momentum or the Howard Stern attitude and go, money fixes everything. We'll just put some dynamite and blow that rock out, and then the amphitheater. Okay, once again, no amphitheater. What happened to the amphitheater? And you know what the reasoning on that was?
No, I don't.
They couldn't find a proper place to build the amphitheater. So then why would you say you're going to build an amphitheater if you couldn't find the proper place to build the amphitheater? I mean, it just didn't make any sense. And what's happened is that they have turned the locals against them. The people in Washington, you talk about you mentioned the Hoffmanns in Washington. Most people go, ugh, like that. You know what I mean? They're just like...
I do. And that was... So one of the thoughts that jumped out at me is, I don't know what Hoffmann does in terms of like PR, but I thought because I thought of you obviously when I read the story, and I thought of how different the tone of the conversation would be if before coming in and investing all this money, they had sat down with the top 20 curmudgeons. So they had taken Brad and 19 other people that are likely to criticize and poke fun at failures, and sat down and gave them an hour each and took them out to lunch and made them feel really special and say, "Gosh, you know so much about Franklin County and Washington, Missouri. We're really thinking about doing stuff, but we don't know. We need somebody with a lot of deep expertise," and placated people and spent an hour with them. And how much that would have tamped down future criticism, whether among elected officials or government people or guys on the radio. But they clearly didn't do that, which further encourages. That would have been my number one recommendation for Hoffmanns, is early placation of people to get the people that'll be sitting in the cheap seats throwing popcorn to at least maybe keep the popcorn in their lap. You get what I'm saying?
Well, and the classic example of this was the thing where they bought this piece of property which abuts the airport. And the airport is owned by the city of Washington, even though it's across the river in Warren County, okay? The airport's owned by the city of Washington. They bought this piece of property, and there's a hangar on it, but the locals down there know it, and this is a crazy thing, has to do with FAA regulations. There's a hangar on the property, but there's no access to the airport. And there's a reason for that, FAA and the whole bit. And what's interesting is they announced that they're buying the airport, and I will give credit to the reporter at the Washington Missourian. They didn't tell the city about this. So in other words, it comes out in the paper that, the Hoffmanns have bought this place right next to the airport. They're going to sell fuel. So in other words, they're going into competition with the city. They're going to build their own FBO, which is essentially what the city of Washington runs. It's called a fixed-based operator, where essentially they offer hangars and fueling. And I don't think they offer any repairs or anything down there. But the crazy part of it is the article comes out in the Washington Missourian that the guy who runs the airport, and I do know him, I think he's still Craig Hellman is his name, he's totally blindsided. Nobody even talked to him.
Yeah, and we've talked about this on the show, Brad. That would be one of the first things you do is go to the city and make sure that you don't have to get their stamp of approval just then, but give them a heads up.
Yes, we're going to buy the property next to the airport. And we know that it doesn't necessarily have access to the airport, but we'd hope you would work with us and working with the FAA, and we want to build an FBO there, and we're not really going to compete with you. We're going to put a helicopter in there, blah, 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 blah. But they don't tell the city. So the city's like, what? We don't know anything about it. The guy that runs the airport.
Yeah, I mean, that's real. And you're also disrespecting those public officials by not bringing them in early. That's just disrespectful.
But once again, it just goes to show you that it's like somebody walking down the street throwing out $100 bills, and some people are going to go, oh man, look at that guy, he's giving away money, and other people are going like, look at that butthead, he's just flaunting his wealth, he's just throwing money around. Who does that? You know what I mean?
I get it completely, Brad.
Okay, you set me up, John.
I did. That was intentional. By the way, how can it be August 28th and new laws take effect and you still aren't acknowledging the birthday of Shania Twain?
I'm such a bad boy. Okay, we have to take a break. We'll be right back.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?